Alright, Shalom Akim. First and foremost, all praises and glory to Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles, the elders of Great Millstone. I was just stumbling over some research, and this seems like old news, but it's the first time I found the website, and it's called Legacies of British Slave Ownership. And I was going to what the project is. It says, Project Context. In 1833, Parliament finally abolished slavery in the British Caribbean, Mauritius, and the Cape. Let me pull this up a little more. The slave trade had been abolished in 1807, but it had taken another 26 years to effect the emancipation of the enslaved. However, in place of slavery, the negotiated settlement establishment a system of apprenticeship tying the newly freed men and women into another form of unfree labor for fixed terms. So saying right there, okay, so just like when the British abolished slavery, because I always talk about, well, America was the last country to abolish slavery of the Western nations, so to speak, if I'm not mistaken. And then it says another 26 years after, it was after the slave trade was abolished, 26, they kept slavery going. Then they supposedly got rid of slavery, but it was just a different form of slavery under a new name. Just like today, they abolished slavery. The Civil War supposedly was supposed to get rid of slaves in America, but really all it did is take away private slave ownership to a system of public slave ownership, where the banking elites, who played a huge part of this, the slave trade, the banking elite now own not only the Israelites, because we're the whole thing about the slave trade was the trade Israelites, to enslave Israelites and put them in hardcore bondage. All right, and sell them over, make money off of them. It was easy money back then. It was a huge billion-dollar industry. Okay, and the legacies of British is so huge that you look back, you got guys like David Cameron. He's a prime minister of Great Britain. His ancestors owned slaves, so he goes all the way back to those family. And the main people, and I found this article on this called Africa Resource, Rothschild. It's a really good article because he pretty much, breaks down everything in here. And he goes into what the Rothschilds are doing. It says the Rothschild bankers, the Freshfield slavers, and the rise of capitalism in the Britain and Americas. So it's like some pro-black dude. Really good article though. And the Rothschild, the Freshfield lawyers, there's a group of lawyers and families that still exist today, that owned law firms, still a huge investor, big player on Wall Street today, all right, and the city of London, still operating and still controlling you, because those same families that control the slave trade own you right now. They own you as a slave. All right. So I'm gonna read a scripture. This is Joel 3:1. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, and I will also gather all nations, and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So there was the Britain, okay, because America broke off, all right, during the time of independence. Let me see. And it says in 1807, right? America was already so-called independent, 1776? So the British were still making money off slavery. Why? Because they had islands, and they had colonies all throughout the Caribbean, Africa, South America. Okay, that's why it says here who are scattered among the nations. They had slaves. They put us all throughout every colony they put us on. So there's Israelites all over the world. How many British colonies were there? You look back into history. So that's a cut on all those idiots who don't think the Israelites are in all these different countries, because we were brought as slaves, and this whole thing proves these scriptures as a prophecy. It's Joel 3:3, and they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. All right. So that's another. They traded for all kinds of stuff for our people. They based all kinds of things on the selling of our people. Human chattel slaves. There was a number being traded on the stock market just like any other good, sugar, and so on and so forth. All right, so I'm gonna read through this real quick. This is back to that Rasta article. It says, two of the biggest names of the city of London had previously undisclosed links to slavery in the British colonies. Documents seen by the Financial Times have revealed. Nathan Meyer Rothschild, this is the main guy, right? The son of Mayer M. Rothschild. All right, the one who went to London. He got it really popping. Why? Because he was a big player in the slave trade. The banking family's 19th century patriarch and James William Freshfield, founder of Freshfields, the top city law firm. So this is like the biggest law firm in the city of London, And it traces itself back all the way to being slave owners, working with the slave trade. Benefited financially from slavery. Records from archives show. That's I showed you the website, the archives they're talking about. All right, and of course I read this article. It was in the Financial Times. Also read some Reuters article. They just totally water it down to make it seem like it wasn't that bad. Why? Because the Rothschilds own all those goddamn media outlets. You can make a goddamn overview of that, but this right here is another prophecy, of Esau's skirt being revealed. People, you can go on here and see every goddamn British person that owns slaves, because it says here, the project. At the core of the project is a database containing the identity of all slave owners in the British Caribbean, and at the time slavery ended. As the project unfolded, we amassed, analyzed, and incorporated information about the activities, affiliations, and legacies of all the British slave owners on the database, building the Encyclopedia of British Slave Owners, which has now been made available online. So that's why they're finding stuff like Cameron, and it says this guy, he's a minister of parliament. All right, these guys go back all the way to slave owners. And nobody likes these goddamn devils, man. All right, here's some other newspaper articles on it. About Britain's colonial shame. Slave owners giving huge payouts after abolition. I'll go into that in a moment. And this one. David Cameron's ancestors received compensation. Britain's massive debt to slavery. So Britain at one time controlled the whole earth, and now it's America. And America has a massive debt to slavery. So the two biggest empires on planet Earth were built on what? The Israelites going into slavery. Let me keep going here. These families are presently the ruling global trillionaire families, who are probably the biggest slavers of all time in global history, right? Because before, slavery was never done on this type of scale, the slave trade. There's always, the so-called white man always likes to say, oh, there's always been slaves, right? Oh, this slavery's been going back since forever, all over. Oh, that's true, but never to this extent. You can say, oh, there's always been, trading between countries and nations. Like, sure, that's always been happening, but not like today, right? How many gallons, millions, billions, trillions of whatever the hell's out there is getting brought from one end of the world to the other? It wasn't moving like that. So when the slave trade happened, people moving like that was unheard of, okay? Plus the whole treatment of them, of our people, the Israelites, whipping our backs, freaking maiming us, raping of the woman, killing the children, feeding us to fucking sharks, all kinds of shit. And that's what you so-called white people did. That's what you benefited off of. So just complete terror. You benefited. The whole reason why you're at the place you're at now is because of the terror you put on who the Most High's chosen people, the Hebrew Israelites, right? Who are the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Okay, in fact, historical. Okay, let me keep going back here. Yep, talking about these trillionaire families, and says their participation in the evil and illegal trade was suppressed until recently because of this project. In fact, historical accounts have been misrepresented to showcase the anti-slavery efforts of these ruling elites, and like the apostles were going into pressure from above, pressure from below, controlling both sides of the spectrum. So at one moment they're selling all kinds of trades and stocks regarding slaves, but on the other side they're funding abolitionist movements saying they're against slavery. Why? Because both of it profits them. I'm gonna go into it. This talks about Rothschild. He was a leading London financier of the time. He was the founder of the dynasty. Okay, he used to sell textiles in Manchester, but he was deeply like the so-called Jew he was. All right, financing, loan sharking, speculation on the slave trading exchange in Manchester. All right, he made so much profit from slave trading and financing in the Manchester slave exchange. He then expanded to dealing on the London Stock Exchange. So he built up. So if you ever see that film Limitless, what's he do? Right? He trades small shit. Or Wolf of Wall Street. They trade small shit, then they start trading big. They make a lot of clout, then they get to invest and trade big stuff. So how did he even come up in the game? He did it from slave trading. And other, you can only imagine what other kind of wickedness he was doing. All right. From 1809, Rothschild began the deal in gold bullion, exploited from Africa and South America. So, just like today, you have all these new money, so to speak, the tech companies, all kinds of billions of dollars. That's nothing compared to what these guys are doing to our people. You're going stealing Israelites, selling them, taking down whole empires on this side of the world. Israelites taking the Aztecs down and stole all their gold. The Inca stole all their gold. All the Reuben and Gad, all the tribes up here. Not the only that, just the coal, everything, iron. But the main thing was the gold. You stole that. And who did it go to? It went straight to Rothschild. All right, so it just talks about how the so-called white men stole from us. All right, and then pretty much he made so much money. He was even richer than the Bank of England. So they took it over. Okay. They became the main trustee. All right. So he was controlling both the abolition movements, trying to be a philanthropist and all. Just like they're doing today, they show the so-called Jew like he's some sort of angel, but he's a goddamn devil. Why? Because they control the media, and they're doing that. They control the newspapers then. All right. So here it says, okay, he was well known for blah, blah, blah. However, in private, Rothschild was making a killing off slavery. New uncovered documents revealed by Financial Times of London the first time show that Rothschild made personal gains by using slaves as collateral in banking dealings with slave owners. Rothschild was one who procured the loan that funded the UK government's bailout of British slave owners when British government sanctioned slaving industry was abolished in the 1830s. So just like how these big banks needed to get bailed out here in America, well, all those British slave owners, they needed to get bailed out. Otherwise, the economy, they would have threatened to crash the economy. So he set up the government, your taxpayer money, British taxpayer money, to pay up to these slave owners, to compensate them for the loss of property. The bailout of slave owners is reportedly the biggest bailout of any industry in history. In today's dollars, it dwarfs recent bailout rescue of the banking, financial, and